me darlings? Well, last week I actually talked about a movie that I didn't like, which is kind of a rarity for me. Maybe it's about time that I catch up on talking about movies that I'd like to tear apart like Huck would tear apart a chicken that was thrown out 3 days ago.
Oh please, I have some sense of taste, thank you very much.
Sadly, having a sense of taste won't help you get through these next coming videos. This week I'm going to be doing a video for every weekday where I'll be talking about the 5 worst movies I have ever seen in my life.
Oh god.
These are the movies that, through one way or another, made me more bored, disgusted, and infuriated than any other movie-going experience I have ever had. And for some of these, I certainly won't be the first person to talk about them, and I normally like talking about movies that I haven't already seen a review of from other people, but these ones just made me so angry that I couldn't resist. Not all of these movies do I consider to be the worst ever made, though some certainly are, but more movies that I just can't stand to watch out of any others. Obviously, if you like these movies, great, you're entitled to your opinion and you can enjoy what you like, but there are a few on here that I'd be very surprised if anybody came out of the woodwork to defend them, believe me. So, with 5 movies to get into, let's not waste any time and get right into the first one we have this week. This one is the least bad out of all of them, but the reason it's here is not only because I feel like I'm in a minority when I say I hate this movie, but because of everything that this particular company has given us over the years. I think this is the worst they've ever done, and that being Disney's Aristocats.
Which pet's address is the finest in Paris? Which pets possess the longest pedigree?
I think I'm going to start making a move now before the comments start flying in.
You stay where you are. You're in the long haul for this as much as I am.
I knew I should have been the mascot for I Hate Everything.
I want to say off the bat, I love Disney, as I've said many times before, and while I have knocked them for some things they've done in the past, and they're certainly not perfect, either in the movies they make or in how they act as a company, it's impossible to deny that if they didn't exist, the animation industry as we know it now would not exist. But they have made a few stinkers over the years, it's impossible to deny that. And for me, the worst of all of them is the Aristocats.
You're making a lot of enemies today, aren't you?
Oh, bring it on. Now I know that might seem odd to some when they've made movies like Chicken Little, Home on the Range, and some of those awful direct-to-video sequels and live-action remakes. Or hey, even Black Cauldron. Oh yeah, I don't like that one either, what of it? But those movies are at least interestingly bad. There's at least something about them that makes them intriguing to watch on how bad they are. Or they at least have something that is admirable about them. This movie is completely devoid of any kind of interest whatsoever, with the exception of 1 or 2 very minor things about it. This movie is just boring to the hilt, and to me that is the worst sin a movie can commit, when it's boring. Now granted, this was the first movie to be made from scratch after Disney died, and while I don't see this movie as being so dull and slightly annoying just because he wasn't around, it is clear that the company had trouble without his hand at the wheel for quite a long time in making their movies to be able to appeal to both kids and adults, which Disney at its best has been able to do so well. This movie is entirely made for kids, and while that's no bad thing in and of itself, maybe don't spend $4 million, which is the equivalent of 30 million in today's money, on a movie that you could have easily have made for peanuts and thrown onto TV. So, the plot of the movie. Well, rather what this movie considers a plot. The rich debutante and former opera singer, Madame Adelaide, played weirdly by Hermione Baddeley, aka the maid from Mary Poppins.
But what am I going to tell the master about the children?
Marie, my little one, you're going to be as beautiful as your mother, isn't she, Duchess?
Lives in her fine Paris house with her cat Duchess, played by Ava Gabor, and her 3 kittens, Toulouse, Marie, and Belanaise. Can you tell this movie is set in France? They live a happy, cozy life, but Adelaide has decided that when she dies, her faithful manservant Edgar will get none of her estate, but her cats will, and he'll be left to look after them. As expected of a man who has to put up with looking after these fluffballs for most of his life, he's devastated, and devises a plan to get rid of the cats, as he's the next in line to inherit everything. So he puts them in a basket and dumps them in the river, which is one of the few times I think this movie had a little bit of edge to it, but sadly it's not as dark as you'd expect it to be. Or at least he tries to, but after an altercation with some dogs, the basket is dumped under a bridge, miles away from the house. The cats meet up with a stray cat called Thomas, played by Phil Harris, aka Baloo from the Jungle Book. After that, it's basically a road trip movie with the cats trying to get back home, but not with really any kind of fun, wacky encounters like in the Jungle Book, or even anything exciting and suspenseful like in 101 Dalmatians. It's just one dull, boring, and nauseatingly cute tale. Oh, and this is probably a good time to mention, I hate cats. I can't help it. Even if I wasn't horribly allergic, which I am, I just don't like the way cats act. The way they see humans as nothing but can openers to their food, and they only come around when they're cold or hungry.
You do realize the way cats act in Felidae isn't real, right?
Well, given what they do in that movie, that's actually a good thing. But I think they were a little closer on some aspects on what cats are like than they realised. Now, I will concede that the cats are sweet. They're animated in an incredibly cute way, and they do cute things, and while the voice acting on the kittens isn't great, it's not the worst kid acting I've seen. Still, they are a pain to listen to for most of the movie.
Every truly cultured music stew.
And Ava Gabor, as you'd imagine, does a great job as Duchess.
Marie, darling, Marie, you must stop that. This is really not ladylike.
Oh, where am I? I'm not at home at all. Children, where are you? Answer me.
I mean, hell, they invited her back to do the voice of Miss Bianca in The Rescuers twice. That's how good a job she did. But the problem is that you can't just have a movie be cute and have almost no other kinds of interest or even story to it. It's just pure fluff and has almost nothing that makes you want to see more, at least when it's just focusing on the cats. The only truly great thing about this movie is the song Everybody Wants to Be a Cat, because it is a legit great song.
Everybody wants to be a cat. Hallelujah. Shanghai, Hong Kong, and Fuyang. Fortune cookie always wrong. Not the hot one.
Alright, some parts haven't aged well, I'll grant you, but it is still a really good song, and you can't beat Scatman Crothers.
Say, this kitten cat knows where it's at.
Maybe not, but Jack Nicholson did shove an axe into his lung.
Well, I guess at that point he really did want to be a cat, because at least he'd have 8 lives left. Now granted, the dogs Napoleon and Lafayette are actually okay, but they're certainly not the best comic relief in a Disney movie. But when you're being voiced by Pat Buttram and George Lindsay, who are regular bit players for Disney back then, you're gonna get some entertainment out of them.
Did you see him? No, he sneaked up behind me and tailgated me.
But sadly, they don't get a lot of time in this movie, and quite frankly, they probably would have made for a better movie if they were the main characters. Hell, even Edgar is more interesting to watch, since he seems like he's the only character to have 3 dimensions to him, and shows the greatest range of emotions throughout the movie. And he's the bad guy! The cats show virtually no expression on them other than a constant look of smugness or disinterest. And granted, that is accurate to how cats are really like in the real world, but this is Disney. They're all about taking things that are dull and mundane and making them come to life. Hell, they did it better with bloody household appliances, for crying out loud, and you can't get cats to feel like they're actually people. I can barely remember a single word any of the cats said in this movie. Granted, Thomas isn't bad. I mean, he's voiced by Phil Harris, and we do get to hear him sing again, which is always a treat.
I've got that wanderlust, gotta walk the scene.
But still, he's not really given any memorable lines to say, or at least ones that suit his voice.
Now that's quite a family. Come and think of it, O'Malley, you're not a cat, you're a rat.
He's meant to be a sort of classy but suave street cat, but Harris does his best when he's playing charming slobs who are a bit sleazy but don't have the greatest amount of class to them. It's a very endearing kind of character, and Harris does that perfectly. This role I think would have been better for someone like George Sanders. It would have been a much better fit for him, especially because Thomas is animated almost exactly like Shere Khan was. Hell, the Italian dub had a better choice for his voice, with a guy who sounded much more like a pompous but gentle gentleman.
Eu quero só mostrar o que gato tem.
Also, does anybody think that he and Duchess have met at some point in the past? Because Toulouse looks way too much like Thomas already.
Haven't we met before?
How would he even have met her? She's a house cat who never goes out.
Hey, alley cats have their ways, you know. I will say that the movie's premise does have potential. Hell, if anything, Dalmatians proved it just a few years earlier that a fluff movie can be done well. I mean, that's my favourite Disney movie, so that's got to count for something. But that movie felt more alternative, with an art style embracing the setting and the plot more. It made it feel like something you'd read in a J.R. Ackley book, or maybe even an A.A. Milne book. Plus, there was tension, there was excitement, and it got pretty dark in some places. Here, there's no tension at all, and the way that the characters treat the scary experiences, they see them more as just a minor inconvenience, and it just makes the movie so dull and irritating.
Gee, Marie, why did you have to fall off the bridge?
And that's even when there is supposed to be tension, because most of the time, there isn't. It's just cats acting cute with other animals, like geese and other cats. And I'm sorry, but it's just not entertaining. Or at the very least, it's not entertaining for an hour and 15 minutes. This is a movie that I actually would welcome a remake if they wanted to do one, because there is potential in this. Make it more of a true adventure. Let there be danger and suspense. Hell, the last 30 minutes of the original 101 Dalmatian is insanely dark and foreboding. It almost feels like a World War II movie. Do something like that. It'd be weird, and obviously old fans would object, but at least it'd be interesting now.
So basically, you'd like this movie if it was more like Watership Down?
Well, maybe not that dark, but it would be better.
So more like Farthing Wood?
Oh yeah, that'd be more like it. But hopefully no kittens would be impaled on branches. Though granted, given how annoying these ones are, I wouldn't mind that. Even the animation leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, granted, it's Disney, so there's always going to be a lot of motion and life to it, as there always is. And despite what a lot of Disney critics say, I actually really like the Xerox era of animation, aka the more sketchy style they used between Dalmatians to Oliver and Company. And for some movies, it worked. And here is one of the few places that it did work, making it almost seem like an alternative piece of artwork from a 1920s underground art show, which fits really well with the street scenes, but it feels rather unfinished and a little rushed in places. This is definitely a movie that suffered due to the head of the company dying at a key moment, and it would take Disney years to get themselves back to the levels of success they had just a few years earlier. Overall, I can see why people like this movie. It's easily the cutest of all the Disney films, but for me, there needs to be more substance to a movie than just pure fluff. And to be honest, with YouTube, I could see cute cat videos for infinity, so this movie is kind of pointless now. A slow start to the week of the worst, but join us back here tomorrow when A Man of Steel gets really rusty.
Are you going to do that at the end of all these videos?
Oh yes, I am.
Please, someone help me.